Okay. I was going to.
Right, okay. Let me.
Well, no, I just muted it. Well, I don't know why it's giving feedback now and it didn't earlier. Is that feedback from here? Yeah. Everybody else is muted. Everybody on Zoom is muted. We started after we dialed in the teleconference line. Yeah. We have that running today too. I don't know what's different.
What's different? Yeah.
Sunny out.
Well, we tested it earlier today. It was sunny. And then adjust the volume down a little bit. See if that helps.
So as we continue to stand by here at Craig City Hall, waiting a quorum, to those on the phone, is there someone representing the Landless Group dialed in? So it must be on Zoom.
Do you guys do the telephone and Zoom?
Sometimes, yeah.
So they can't call in over Zoom?
No, they can.
Yeah.
But sometimes we
I
get
know
a,
I know
we
what
get some,
you guys are talking about now. We have that problem when we telephone.
Get
If
some
we call in and
feedback.
not use the Zoom number.
Does yours feedback
Yeah.
real bad?
Yeah, we have to go off of video. Just use audio now.
Yeah,
Is that for some reason? I know you guys are gonna.
that's
know
interfering with
that. Yeah, we
that.
tried to do it, so it's easier just to use the Zoom number.
So I just put the GCI conference number in the chat box on Zoom. So for folks that are going to be speaking tonight, they should call into that number. Our Zoom is creating some feedback in the room, so we're not able to put the Zoom on speaker. Back to the drawing board.
What on earth? It was a dream earlier. We had phone from upstairs. We had it in there. We had it, and it was fine. Brian, do you think it's long distance? Maybe that's if that would do it. Hi, has anyone new joined us?
This is Alan Vince in Washington, D.C. I'm on the phone.
Thank you. Welcome.
This is Andrew Belvedere, also in Washington, D.C. Also on the phone. Thanks.
Thank you.
So good evening, this is Todd Antioquia, calling from Juneau, supporting the landless, Southeast Alaska Landless Corporation members.
Thank you.
What was that first name?
There was Andrew
Todd
Todd.
Antioquia.
Hmm?
Todd Antioquia
Okay.
is the gentleman who just identified himself.
Hello?
Hi, who do we have? Has someone new joined the phone call?
Is that what you were talking about, Brian?
Hello?
Hi there. Who do we have on the phone?
Hi. This is Cecilia Tavallero.
Hi, Cecilia. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Randy Williams on the phone.
Hi, Randall. Thank you.
So this is John Bowling at the City of Craig. For those of you on the phone, the teleconference line, if you would please mute your phones when you're not speaking, it can help eliminate the feedback we're hearing. So again, please mute your telephones unless you're recognized to speak. Thank you.
Hannah, do you remember if Julie said? That's
That Julie?
Hey.
that, Julie.
Sorry, we had a graduation.
That's why I couldn't remember. I thought you did.
Head Start graduation.
Yeah.
Forgot about that.
I would tell you.
Did this thing die? Maybe dead. Nope, like at 24%, we're good.
Okay. I can grab a charger and wait for it right here.
Okay, I think I'm all right.
Okay.
Are we waiting on somebody else too?
We have Chanel on the phone,
Oh, okay.
so we have a quorum.
Yeah, we'll do roll call. Call the meeting to order.
Julie McDonald,
Here?
Hannah Bezanet,
Here.
Michael Kavnich,
Here.
Chanel McKinley,
Here.
Timothy O'Connor.
Here.
Thank you.
Moving on to consent agenda.
Tax question consent agenda.
Go ahead.
So we have a letter from Craig Tribal to consider, or I would imagine to consider, but it isn't on the agenda, at least as I can see it. Should we enter it onto the agenda? Under new business?
Well, typically, it's open to hearing from the public. Would probably be earlier on the agenda, a more convenient time to speak.
Okay.
But if you want to modify the agenda to
No,
that,
you're right. You're right about that. But I did want to recognize the letter.
Hope that ain't fire, Glenn.
And my wife had all those kids at the game.
No, just a broken radio. Okay. I'm going to accept this consent agenda, or
Would you accept the consent agenda?
Second.
motion's been made to accept the consent agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Moving on to hearing from the public, we're open for public comment. Anyone that's speaking for the landless situation here that we're dealing with, would you please pick one representative to speak for all of you? And if that person wishes to recognize someone else, then he needs to let us know and we'll recognize that person to speak in turn. So is there anyone from the landless group that is wanting to speak?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Yeah, this is Todd Antioquia. I apologize. We must have misunderstood. We thought that we were on later on in the agenda after a presentation. So would you prefer our presentation to come under public comment?
Yeah, please.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With that, I'll ask the president of the Southeast Alaska Landless Corporation, Cecilia Tavallaro, to begin.
Okay.
Okay, so, I'm sorry, I'm speaking to the mayor.
Okay.
Yes, you're actually addressing the mayor and members of the city council.
Great, thank you. My name is Cecilia Tavallaro, and I'm with Southeast Alaska Landless Corporation. So we are actually after Resolution 2111, shows our CEDAR group regarding the proposed new INCSA corporation land selections on Prince of Wales Island on the agenda.
Yeah.
So this is kind of confusing.
It's revised. It's not on there anymore, it's revised.
What?
The agenda was revised. So it's not on there anymore.
It's on the amended agenda under hearing from the public.
Yeah. But
Yeah. It's on the amended agenda?
Yes.
Hearing for the public?
Yes.
All right. So Cecilia, do you want to speak on this? Are you prepared?
I actually am, but like I said, this is kind of confusing because we have a presentation from the CEDAR group right after, the resolution 21-11, supporting the Port St. Nicholas Road. But I can go ahead and start if you would rather us.
We would prefer that we start now with you and
Okay.
get this done, kind of. We thought you were going to be here in person, so we can only allot you like 10 minutes of time here to address this. So if you would wish to proceed, and if you need to recognize another person to speak, then we will do that. If you just give me their name, and we'll let them speak also if you need them.
All right. Well, right after I speak, I'd like to call on Todd Antioquia. We do have a presentation that we were going to make. First off, I would like to introduce myself, Cecilia Tavallaro. I grew up in Petersburg. I was born in Cape. I am a Petersburg landless shareholder. I am president of Southeast Alaska Landless Corporation. And who we are is Southeast Alaska Landless Corporation is the umbrella corporation of each of the 5 communities that were left out of INCSA: Ketchikan, Wrangell, Petersburg, Haines, and Tenakee. And each of our 5 communities in order to approach Congress and look as though we were organized and unified. We each have a nonprofit corporation in our community, and 2 of our 7 board member nonprofit representatives are selected from each community, and that is Southeast Alaska Landlords Corporation board members. First off, I would like to, Richard Reinhardt was going to be present tonight, and I understand that there were some folks from POW that were not very happy that a couple of the communities had land selections over on POW. However, I did want to just point out that there is historical evidence of Wrangell using Lake Bay near Kaufman Cove from time immemorial. They've got a lot of history around that area, so that's the reason why they chose land around there. It's not random, it's not by happenstance. There's a lot of evidence, historical evidence of the Wrangell folks, especially the Teton clan, having a lot of subsistence use in the Kaufman Cove and Lake Bay area. Let's see. Madonna Moss put together a study, The Archaeology of Kaufman Cove, 5,500 Years of Settlement in the Heart of Southeast Alaska. That was published by the University of Oregon and Natural Cultural History and Department of Anthropology, University of Oregon, in 2016. So there was the story of the Teton clan crest hat that was about given by a Tsimshian chief to avert potential conflict for a life unjustly taken. They floated that hat across the tidal lake to the Teton on Lake Bay. The hat was literally paid for in blood, and it was done at the Teton summer camp at Lake Bay. And one more story. There was a feud between Sitka and Wrangell Tlingit. It's gone on for 4 generations, with the last action being a massacre of Wrangell people in Sitka in 1855. So it started around 1700. And that was related to Lake Bay because a Wrangell man had taken a Sitka Kagwantan man's wife. When the Sitka man asked for his wife back, the Wrangell man shot him dead. A few years later, some Sitka men heard that this man was out at Lake Bay fishing, hunting, and training himself, and they went out to find him. And they killed him at the saltwater falls coming out of Lake Bay during low tide. So there's all kinds of history showing usage of the area. And so, as previously stated, it was not a happenstance decision to choose land around there. I would like to just point out that I have been involved with Petersburg land lists for many years. A lot of times we felt like giving up or hope, but in the same vein as our ancestors chose to continue for our grandchildren what we're doing. And so I've been involved for a few years, and as the years go by, there's a mounting inequity, and we're hoping that this will be resolved very soon. There just is no reason why the 5 communities got left out. At the time, apparently, village corporations are the ones that were getting their corporations and their land, and that was because the native population was the majority in the community. However, later on, as the act was evolving, the urban corporations were formed, and that was historical presence, but the native population was not the majority. So we could have qualified for urban corporation status way back then. As it is now, there's 2 in Southeast Alaska, Sitka and Juneau, and also up north there's Kenai and Kodiak. So we definitely would qualify, and that's where we would come in today, where when our bill passes. So that's my little piece. I would like to call on Todd to speak on behalf of the Alaska Natives Without Land campaign. Todd? And then Andrew.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Manager, and council members. Goodness Chief for the opportunity. I'll just be very, very brief because we also have Randy Williams, who's a board member of the Southeast Alaska Land Corporation here, and Nicole Hollingstad, who is a landless shareholder from Petersburg. And we had understood that there was going to be a Q&A session, and so we had asked our DC council to join us. So Alan and Andrew are for late night for them, but I'm sure that they're available to answer any of your questions about the legislation. But we really appreciate this opportunity. The 5 communities have banded together to unify and conduct outreach, which they have throughout the entire region, and doing meetings just like this to build awareness about the history, the mounting injustice, and the opportunity now to be recognized under the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act, and for their 5 communities as well as the rest of the Southeast region to be able to benefit from the economic development of writing this historic injustice as it relates to Native Indigenous land recognition. So we look forward to additional opportunity to be able to interact with you to answer any questions and are available at any time. So with that, I would have maybe Randy and Nicole as landless shareholders, and then if you have questions of our DC council, they're available as well. So if I may, Mr. Mayor, hand it over to Randy.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, Randy Williams. I'm from Ketchikan. Apologize for not being able to come over, but we've had quite an outbreak of COVID over here, as you guys probably have read or heard. So we're kind of travel restricted and just trying to be extra careful. Overall, I think that, this meeting was, as everybody stated previously, an attempt to communicate with your government for the purpose of understanding, and that understanding is why we would select land over there, and also, sort of the history that Cecilia told you. I think that it's important that, we have this open line communication with all of the communities so that they fully understand, what's happening, where we're at with the bill, and where we intend to go with it. And I think that's important for us to do with your community, especially because we have selected land in your homeland. Overall, I think that, we need a more robust discussion period for all of us. Maybe at some point I can come over there with another one of the landless members, and we can communicate better to you than through this medium. But I think overall the message that we want to portray tonight is that, we want to work with your community to make sure that we address the needs and the concerns that you guys may have. We may not agree on them completely, but at least we can start to address them and maybe flesh out some resolution that certainly would make sense for your community and for the landless group. Thank you.
Okay. Well, we have some questions here. One of them is, why are the selections on Prince of Wales needed for angst urban corporations like Ketchikan and Wrangell? And we were not consulted on this at all when this was in the forming process. You guys were already negotiating stuff and picking land and everything else, and they never informed anybody on Prince of Wales. The Craig Tribal Association, Sean Seat, Klawakinya, City of Craig, no one was notified that you guys were looking at land claims here until it was well underway, and the senators were well on their way to forming their opinions on this. So can you tell me why you guys from Ketchikan and Wrangell feel that you should be able to pick off all this land on Prince of Wales instead of taking it out of the forest in your area? Anyone?
Mr. Mayor, this is interject, I'd be happy to try to take a shot at that if nobody else would speak up. So I'm here in Washington, D.C., and I serve as Washington, D.C. counsel, and have been working with Alan Mintz on this legislation for many years. I guess I would note at the outset that the delegation, and of course we don't speak for the delegation, that the delegation was engaged in meetings and conversations with folks back home over the course of a year. And the extent to which they may or may not have had conversations with you is not within our purview. I guess we had understood that there had been conversations with the community. Whether those conversations related specifically to the map, we can't speak to that. With regard to the specific land, and when we're talking about Prince of Wales Island and Hecate Island, I think we're talking about 3 parcels, one on Hecate, one on northern Prince of Wales, the Red Bay, and the third that was already addressed. I'm not in a position as council to speak to the historic uses of these lands, but certainly I have heard over time about the historic use of these lands by the Wrangell people with regard to Red Bay and the other selection over on the eastern side of the island, and with Tuxpan people over on Hecate. But again, I can't really speak to the historic connection. What I can say is that this legislation has come together over the course of 30 to 40 years, and the map the same, through a process that has involved individual communities looking at the lands that are available. And as I'm sure you can appreciate, there are severe limitations on the lands that are available for a variety of reasons. As you can appreciate, there are those who would oppose collections in areas that would be suitable for timber development for a variety of reasons, and there are those who oppose collections in areas that are not suitable for timber development for a variety of reasons. And I know that with regard to Ketchikan specifically, and I would defer to Randy on it, there were efforts made to select lands that were closer to the city of Ketchikan, and it was the U.S. Forest Service that pushed us out of those areas at their strong objections. And so again, each individual community, now 50 years after the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act passed, has been struggling to identify lands that would fit this Rubik's Cube of issues that is required to identify lands that will work to the best degree possible for all stakeholders involved. And certainly, we can't speak for the delegation with regard to their consultation with you, but I think the objective of this meeting is to have the conversation about the specific concerns that you may have with regard to those parcels. I hope that helps.
Somewhat. Like I say, I don't understand why those choices can't be made in their own backyards instead of coming over to Prince of Wales. We've lost 50% of our land mass on Prince of Wales to state forest, mental health, See Alaska, which shut down their entire logging operations and everything overnight. There's corporations here that aren't represented. We have several that are. And we feel that all you guys are entitled to what you've got. There's no question of that. But we don't understand why you need to pick it off of Prince of Wales instead of picking it out of your own backyard. And if the Forest Service objects there, how come they're not objecting here to Prince of Wales?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Celia Tadlero, if I may, just make a couple of comments. Number one, we did map selections back in 2007. So whatever community members that were present, many of the elders who were involved in this whole process are gone now, and we're still carrying on the battle. And one of our representatives fairly recently said that what we've been left with is a lot of the areas is scrapped because other people have come in and were able to take precedence in choosing lands and wilderness areas and all that way before us. So we're still standing in line, and that's part of the reason for us meeting with you today is to let you know that, we would like to, have a face-to-face conversation, with you all. And, while it is federal land, I know, the state, the universities, the mental health lands, all kinds of folks have come in and traded and pitched over on lands, way before us. So here we are, still standing in line, and I just would like to, thank you for, listening to us and, agreeing to, hear our side of the story. And also, there's a lot of shareholders, I believe, from Wrangell and Ketchikan on Prince of Wales. So hopefully they'll be brought up to speed on what's going on in your island as well. Beautiful Prince of Wales. Thank you for that.
Okay, you're welcome. We're aware of one shareholder on the island from Prince of Wales, Wrangell, or from Wrangell, Ketchikan area, but we're not aware of any others. But that's kind of a moot point. So, what uses do you propose for this new urban corporations plan for the POW land selections? What purposes are you going to use that for? What's proposed?
Mr. Mayor, this is Todd, if I may.
Okay, Todd.
Just to the last point related to the landless shareholders that are residents on Prince of Wales. There's currently 112 households on Prince of Wales that have landless shareholders within them across both Craig, Heidelberg, Kasan, Klawak, and Point Baker all have landless shareholders included. And one item I might add too, as it relates to as the lands were brought or farther and farther away from a lot of the communities, there was a lot of questions from, similar questions from other communities about access or concern around the utilization of recreation or subsistence. One of the tenets of the five landless community leadership is to be able to continue to provide for and guarantee that access. And so they asked for the delegation to include substantive language that grants those rights. So that was one area that none of the other original village or urban corporations had to provide for, but it was something that the five communities were willing to, partly because of this the necessity to move farther and farther away from their own communities. And then I might defer to Randy on the questions about land use. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Well, can you state how those uses are going to benefit Prince of Wales island residents in any way by these landless claims, being able to claim this land here? How is that going to benefit the residents?
Nicole?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'll take a stab at that. Well, as you know, economic development is a criteria that would that has benefited the community with your corporation and with Klawak's corporation. In terms of what we plan to do with the land, we're not the board of directors for the corporation. So we selected the land, and a board will be elected after the bill passes. But I would say that all in all, we would look at, number one, perhaps preserving the land. If we put it in carbon sequestration, that will certainly preserve the land. We may look at logging. I'm not gonna, everybody knows that's a potential outcry of what could happen. But we all know that the markets are depressed and that doesn't make a lot of sense. We look at ecotourism that may or may not benefit your community, or you may or may not like that in your community, but we may provide that. and I think it would benefit your community because all of those activities will create employment in your area. They won't create employment necessarily for Ketchikan or Wrangell, but they'll create employment for the people who live on your island, on Prince of Wales Island. So, I mean, overall, it's an economic benefit that we think would be very beneficial for the community. And you know, we'll grow with you guys. I mean, that's when we do come in and we will talk to you and say, you know, this is what we're planning. What do you guys think? I think that's just a reasonable approach and a reasonable way to go about it. And certainly it's going to be about job creation and the generation of revenue for the corporation. But most of that would occur with your people on your island. So I think that's the real benefit to it.
Okay. Why does the proposed Wrangell Corporation propose to select 627 acres in the Lake Bay Creek sections near Kaufman Cove instead of, say, off of Zarimbo or Edland or somewhere closer to home?
Well, unfortunately, I'll take a stab at just to give a quick explanation. The representative for Wrangell couldn't attend tonight, Richard Reinhardt. So unless somebody else has maybe an answer for that, I mean, I couldn't speak to it.
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, this is Cecilia Taballero again. And I did briefly review that the Teton clan from Wrangell traditionally used Lake Bay, and that's why they claimed it.
Yeah, we understand the historical part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And we respect that and understand what you're trying to say there, but we're just kind of wondering if there's another reason other than that that you're aware of. And
Levon, are you on the call?
Well, I think Lalonde's actually just Mr. Mayor, this is Todd. If I may.
yeah, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So very similarly to Ketchikan, and actually all five communities have been forced into this situation. As you know, the land selections that would have been made had they been recognized as they rightfully should have 50 years ago would have been vastly different because the makeup of the Tongass has changed so dramatically. You know, you indicated that the state lands, mental health trust, land into conservation, utilization and development of federal lands, through the Forest Service and so forth. All of that, if you look at the ever-changing landscape of the Tongass over the 50 years, there were dramatic shifts in what was available for them to fit closer to their communities. And that's true in Haines, Tenakee, Wrangell, Petersburg, and Ketchikan. All five are facing these similar challenges.
Okay. Can you tell me why does proposed Ketchikan Corporation propose to select 7,827 acres near Red Bay on Prince of Wales? Did they have historical use there, or is there another reason?
Mr. Mayor, this is Randy Williams.
Okay, Randy, go ahead.
The reason why we selected that land, to be quite honest with you, is because we were pushed out of our land. We made other selections in and around Ketchikan where the Forest Service said you can't select those lands. That's just not going to happen. And so subsequently we looked at the best possible land for us for development and for economic development. And you know, for you guys, unfortunately, that's Red Bay. For us, of course, that's a look towards the future. overall, historically, a lot of people from Ketchikan, myself included, originate from Quogue and Craig. So, you know, we're certainly familiar with the community. I fished out there for all of my young life anyway. And so, you know, that's sort of why we selected it, because we do have familiarity with the area. We do understand the people out there. We're part of those people. And to be quite honest with you, because it created an economic advantage for us to choose that land over some pieces of parcel that were not have much value at all in other areas. If you look at us, we're scattered. We can't even choose basic land in our homeland of Ketchikan now, because the city's put a perimeter around it that won't allow anybody to select land around it. And so we had to venture out, I guess, is not the best way to phrase it, but it's the way that we had to look at it and look for the best possible land. And Red Bay was one of those pieces. And parts of Hecata.
Okay. The city of Craig coexists with Chauncey as well as Joaquina. We are neighbors, as well as we own land within the city limits and everything else. They own land within the city limits, and we own land within their corporate lands. And we understand that connection, but we don't understand why someone from Ketchikan feels that they should come over here. That's what our questions are. And why the city of Ketchikan can't allow the Forest Service to select land over in that area. That's what we've been trying to figure out.
Yeah, I guess there's no real rhyme or reason for that, except to say that you know, we were restricted, and there are restrictions that were imposed upon us. We chose a whole island off of the north side of Ketchikan that the Forest Service said absolutely not. You're not going to be able to do that. And so, like I said, we selected land. It's a scattergun. It's basically a scattergun approach to land selection for that point, because we have to look at the best possible land for us to select. And like I said, unfortunately, some of that land is on your island and not on our island, which is Ketchikan, because of the many restrictions that were imposed upon us. You know, it's sort of like the land selections of old. The communities had opportunity to select in the community and around their community. We don't have that latitude, and we weren't given that latitude, and won't be given that latitude under the current legislation. And so that's why we selected. I don't think that's an answer that you guys can appreciate, but it certainly is an answer that is honest. That is the reason why we selected on your island.
Does that mean that you felt there'd be less resistance over here if you chose land here?
No, we didn't make that determination at all. I mean, we didn't even consider that. We just, to be quite honest with you, we looked at the best possible land and we selected those pieces that were available to us. Keep in mind that if you took a map and X'd out several hundred parcels of land and said you only have these to choose from, well, those were the ones that we chose from. And Red Bay was one of those selections that we could choose from, and so we chose from it because of basically the value of the land.
Okay. Why does Ketchikan feel that they need to go clear over to Hecka? Is it the same reason they feel that that's where they would have let them choose the land, is over there on Hecata Island?
Yeah, that's the reason why. I mean, we selected land where we could around our area, and then we moved outwards from there. I mean, this, like somebody said, this is a 50-year years that were much different than today. And unfortunately, because of the criteria that was imposed upon us, that precipitated the need to go out into these basically far-reaching areas, and that's why both Hecata and Red Bay were selected by Ketchikan.
Okay. What is your plans to do with that land if you get it? Is it gonna go into carbon credits? You gonna log it?
That hasn't been determined yet. And we'll have conversations with you guys, what you guys would like to see us do. I mean, however it benefits the community and the corporation, that's the way I look at it anyway, moving forward, is sort of a collaborative effort to do the right thing, but yet we have to maintain our sense of economy and the need of the corporation to generate revenue. And so, however that best fits the corporation and hopefully your community, that's the way we'll proceed. If there's a conflict, then, that's something that we'll just have to address. But yeah, either way, the land will be used for ecotourism. It'll be used for logging, if that makes sense. And of course, in today's market, it doesn't. Or we would look at carbon sequestration, if that makes sense. And that's something that makes a little more sense right now, just because of the depressed logging market. So that's kind of where we'll go with it. But you got to keep in mind that, and I'll just say this again, it's all about the economy of the communities too, because your people will be the ones that will be employed in those areas, no matter which way we go or what we do out there. It's going to take your local population to be our job market, and so that's where the jobs, when we create them, the people will come from your areas to fulfill our needs for employment support out there.
Okay, thank you. If the proposed land selections are ultimately approved, will Prince of Wales residents be offered continued access to these selections for subsistence reasons, hunting, fishing, bark gathering, traditional reasons, cultural reasons? Will they be allowed access?
Andrew?
Mr. Mayor, this is Andrew Van Jack speaking.
Okay.
The bill provides for continuation in perpetuity of public access on the roads and trails and on the land for non-commercial subsistence, hunting and fishing, and recreational activities, and authorizes directs the urban corporations to extend any existing special use authorizations that may exist for the term of the permit, as well as for an additional 10-year term, and then directs the urban corporations to work with the holders of the special use permits from that point forward to permit such activities. There are also provisions in the bill that make clear that the federal government and the state government can continue to use all the transportation facilities on those lands. I know that's not specifically related to public access. I guess the point I wanted to get to is that there are roughly 6 pages of language in the bill that set forth all the various ways that the legislation would protect public access. And I would just note that the landless community asked for that language. It was not imposed on the landless community. That was requested by the landless community to make sure that that land remains open to public access, recognizing the current use of that land by folks on Prince of Wales Island and other areas where selections have been made. I hope that helps, sir.
Yes, it does. Thank you. Will the proposed land selections on Prince of Wales result in lower payments in lieu of taxes, PILT money, payments to Prince of Wales communities.
Mr. Mayor, this is Andrew Vanderjack speaking.
Okay, Andrew.
I would have to try to run the numbers, sir, but we went through a similar exercise both with Petersburg and Wrangell in addressing some specific questions related to PILT and secure rural schools. The PILT numbers and the secure rural schools numbers, they work off of each other. When there's a reduction in one, the other number can come up. I just want to note that the formula for determining what those payments are is quite complicated. But as I recall, in examining the impact to Petersburg and Wrangell of 23,040 acres coming out of those two boroughs, the result was, I believe it was in the neighborhood of about $5,000 to $6,000 a year, less than 1/500th of the property tax income expected by those communities. And one of the things that we noted in reviewing those numbers is that those numbers come down every year by statute, that they're not guaranteed by statute. And in reviewing those numbers and seeing the relatively small impact of removing that acreage from those boroughs would have, the likelihood that having economic activity would make up the difference of 1/500th of the property tax income of those communities was extremely high, because of those activities, of course, would be taxed by the borough with jurisdiction over those areas. I hope that helps.
Somewhat, yes, it does. Thank you. Council, does anyone have any questions or anything they'd like to say to the landless representatives? Would CTA or Chauncey care to speak to them on this landless situation?
I would like to, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Clinton Cook from Craig Tribal Association wants to speak to you.
For those online, my name's Clinton Cook. I'm the tribal president here in Craig, and it always hurts when the tribes get left out because we bear the use of that land as rural users. We adamantly oppose lands being selected in Prince of Wales. Our lands have been logged for years. The areas you are selecting are what's left. What's left is the deer habitat we have left. When ANSCA becomes law, it instantly becomes private, taking away the rural determination of members and everybody on Prince of Wales Island. Those are some of our thoughts with the landless selecting lands on Prince of Wales Island. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Clinton. We want to let you people know, we feel that you strongly deserve to get your land or your settlement of some type, but the only thing we oppose is constantly them being allowed to take land off of Prince of Wales. We've lost over 50 to 55% of our land mass to wildernesses, corporations, Forest Service, all these activities of mental health and state and everybody else. We've almost exhausted our land mass to attract a new sawmill to come in here that's going to handle the second growth that'll be coming off of corporate lands, as well as Forest Service lands or private lands here, and state lands also. Because all that second growth is going to start coming of age within the next 10 to 20 to 30 years, and we don't have a mill at this time capable of taking care of it. You say the log market's down right now, but the lumber prices are out the roof right now. It's, you know, a sheet of plywood selling for $80, where last year it was selling for $30. So I think there is demand for wood, and I think that just because you can't export it, the Chinese aren't going to buy it, but I think there is demand here. But to fill that demand, we need a mill that'll supply local wood to mills down south, or mill it here and ship it south. And if we keep continuing to lose the land mass, we're not gonna have that resource to draw from. That's another one of our concerns here. So has anybody got anything else to say? You're more than welcome to speak if you have anything else.
Nicole? Alan?
Yes, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, this is Todd, and just Cecilia wanted to call, unfortunately, was unable to call in and was unable to address the body via Zoom here, but I really appreciate, Mr. Mayor, the words of the tribal president, President Cook. We are very eager to engage the tribes, all 5 communities, to see where there are possible partnerships. To the fact that the part of the reason why the access was guaranteed was for all very many of the uses that President Cook listed as it relates to subsistence and hunting and fishing and gathering for our arts. Returning these lands to native hands, there's the spirit of not only holding it in perpetuity for the benefit of all Alaskan natives, but to be able to find opportunity for us to strengthen each other and lift each other up in the spirit of the values that have driven us for millennia. So we're very eager to interact directly with the president and with the rest of the tribal council and private members, and then also appreciate your words, Mr. Mayor, as it relates to the future of Prince of Wales and economic development, looking at the second growth opportunities. That's another area too where I think that there's the opportunity to be able to partner and find innovative new ways to utilize these new institutions that care about your communities, that care about the land, that are going to hold the perpetuity to be able to maybe partner with you to address some of those options moving forward. These 5 communities are seeking your support in the long run, and know this is a long process. This is not the only step, but hopefully the early steps of many for us to be able to collaborate and hopefully find and win that support. So we greatly appreciate this effort. We hear every concern, every idea, and we'll continue to be available to continue this dialogue if you're willing, and we certainly are.
All right, thank you, sir. Anyone else have anything to say before we conclude the land discussion?
Mr. Mayor, this is Cecilia Tavalero. I just want to thank Chief for speaking to us and also listening to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on then. Thank you, people, for showing up. Next time we'd like to see you in person if we can. So.
Thank you.
Very much so, Mr. Mayor. Good night, Chief. We will be there.
All right, thank you. Okay, moving on. We've lost it all. There it is. We can do that ordinance now, or?
Hearing from the public, I think is still
Yeah.
open, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, that's
so
right. Sorry,
If
guys.
there's folks in the room that would like to comment.
That was a long one. Burned me up. Hearing from the public, you guys. Clayton, go ahead.
Okay, you guys got the letter in your packet. Thank you for your time tonight. I appreciate it. All I won't be as long as them. We don't want much land. We don't want 7,000 acres. We want some land use. The city's gonna build the dock, whether it got voted on or not, I'm assuming. That's the plan. The letter represents the history of Craig. Is well documented. Many of you maybe who are not as local as some locals know the areas were formed by the Hydas and the Plinkets, along with Sean Seaton's pasture. We're asking for a parcel of land to be able to rededicate our culture on Tannery Point. We'd like to secure some funding for a longhouse, possible museum on this property. This is actually a good picture to look at because in the past of Old Craig, you've seen the canoe runs that they reused here to land on the beach. Well, somewhere along the line, somebody thought a rock wall would be better, so the canoe runs are now gone. That took a big part of our culture away from us. There's still some more located on Fish Egg. There's a petroglyph on the south end of Fish Egg. We want some remembrance of how our community started. And, you know, we'd like to talk about different areas of land if the city is willing to look at that option for the Craig Tribal Association. That's what I'm here for tonight. I know it's a beginning, it's the start of a letter. We just want to be able to recognize who was here first. Thank you.
Thanks, Glenn.
John, is there still that, I don't know if it was a committee, but that group that was meeting to discuss the harbor design? You know what I'm talking, it was a planning commission, or maybe Brian knows, there was another committee that was meeting to discuss design options.
Yeah, there was a group that was kind of discussing potential uses of the property. And that group, at the conclusion of their work, forwarded a list of recommendations to the city council, which the council reviewed and approved. And so that group they're not actively
Okay.
meeting or working on anything right now.
Okay,
The planning commission is currently discussing zoning issues related to the property.
okay. I was just thinking about forwarding the letter to that group if they were still meeting.
Mr. Ed,
Mr. Mayor, how are you?
pretty good, are you? Look tired.
I am. 4 a.m. comes early.
Yeah, I know.
I'd like to thank the city council for letting me speak for a second. I've submitted a letter, and this is for ordinance number 734 for Sean C. And it has 3 different options for the city council to consider moving forward. And then I'm here to answer any questions that you might have about it.
Questions? Go ahead, Mike.
So I do have a little bit of an issue with this, and I see this as putting the city in a position of making decisions on, land. And, what'll happen in the future. Because of past history, we had no way of influencing this, it wasn't our decision to set this up like this. We that's as it is. And I haven't, actually I haven't asked John or Brian, I'm not sure what Mr. Payne maybe thinks of this, but I'm uncomfortable with this because I feel like it's not our position to get into private land, determinations like that. That's outside of our zoning. It's just kind of how I see it. I mean,
I think I agree with you, and we share those same concerns right back, though. And that's why this letter was wrote, is because, and I think you are right, it kind of ties us together. And, with the options that we have presented to the city council, I believe it will work better in the future when the land is sold and transferred, because ultimately, that's what Sean Seat wants to maintain, is the ability to sell and transfer the land freely in order to maintain the value of the land. So I understand your concern, and I see it, and I feel, we kind of feel the same way, and that was the reason for the letter.
Have you approached Mr. Payne on this?
No, and Mr. Payne hasn't approached us on this. But if we have the first right of refusal on the land, and for whatever reason in the future, a sale is denied from the city to Sean C., or vice versa, it could jeopardize the sale of the whole property. And maintaining the first right of refusal on the properties is very important for Sean C. to maintain control of that, because of our declaration of our protected declaration of covenants from 1984 that set up the home sites in the first place to be developed and used as home sites for the community. And we believe that has, brought a lot of value to the city of Craig, a lot of revenue, tax money. We know that, we don't always see eye to eye on the road stuff, and on the tax stuff, but, we believe there's a lot of value that is brought in by the St. Nicholas community.
Brian, can you answer this? Would there be two separate titles on that piece of property if the landowner of the land, which is adjacent to the Sean C. Original land, if you combine the tithe with it, is that going to be one separate parcel, or is it going to be two separate parcels?
If the property owner goes through the process to replat the property into a single lot, that's how it would be recorded, and that would be the legal standing of the lot. The lot that's not required in terms of this process, because if we go through with the sale, we would require a survey of the tideland being sold. The survey could either delineate the tideland as a discrete parcel in itself, or could add the tideland to the upland parcel. Either way, a plat gets produced. We don't have a requirement one way or the other for the property owner, so it would be, at this point, generally our practice has been to leave it to the property owner to make that determination when they do the plat of the tideland, whether or not to replat the uplands as well.
If it was replatted and it was combined into one unit or one, then you would have that right.
Yeah. Which would tie the land together and keep the land intact and
exactly
maintain the sale for the property owner. I know it looks like we're trying to, ruin Mr. Payne's sale here, but this is actually for the benefit of all property owners, including our shareholders. So we want to, make sure that, there's no hard feelings between us and Mr. Payne, but, we're concerned about the future and the sales of the property, because we already see problems with the sales of the property in the future, with people building houses that aren't in code and aren't able to get, mortgages at the bank. And we see owner finance coming in from out of town, and it's going all to the highest bidder right now. So, in the best interest of the homeowner and our shareholders, I think it would be important to be able to go to the bank and get a mortgage for this stuff. And because of our covenants, it does make it difficult sometimes. If we tie the two together like we're suggesting, I think it would be a lot easier, because Chauncey goes through a lot of these first right of refusals, and we're just getting more every day. Like I said, the land sales are not slowing down. I know you guys know that. They're coming. So that's what this letter is in concern of, so.
Mike?
I mean, my understanding is the city only owns, or excuse me, there's only 4 or 5 private lots within the city
Yes.
limits, is that?
It would only be applicable, you're right, Mike, it would only be
Right.
applicable to like a certain area. But it's more about the precedent of keeping the land together to maintain the ability to sell it again, and just that ease of selling it, I guess. Because if we don't maintain that, then people are gonna get discouraged and they're gonna start buying land other places, which I don't think would be in the best interest of Chauncey or the city of Craig.
Well, I share your concern with, you know, the lack of zoning in some areas, and I know that, you know, people out further that, you know, people with nice homes, and then there's other situations where,
It's a mess.
you know, and, but we have no influence over that, I mean, and, you know, people have no choice, and so they live there, and that's their prerogative, so we really have only the 4 or 5 lots that are, you know, under our purview at all.
And then it's the state of Alaska from there on out, because we don't own the tidelands from there on out. But, you know, and we brought up the same concerns with the state of Alaska. We've seen tidelands in front of our property because we feel like it not only discourages the sale, but it limits the use of the land for our shareholders and the people that own that property as well. They could in the future. I mean, if they had, I mean, they've done leases for clam farms that we knew nothing about, that were tied to the tidelands were tied to our uplands. You know, and we had plans in the future, 40 years from now, to log that. You know, that's gonna be a problem when we go in there and we see an aquatic farm in there. So that's one of the reasons that, you know, I don't want you to think this is specific towards the city of Craig. It's a concern that we've shared through the state of Alaska, and it's a concern that we're voicing again.
You know, I'll be honest, I feel like the city of Craig is put into a position, this is my personal feeling, where, you know, we're being an arbitrator of private land stuff just outside of our zoning, which gives us the authority to make decisions, and then that's just tough for me to, as somebody who also owns private land, that's tough for me to accept. I mean, if somebody was trying to influence my decision what to do on my property outside of, you know, established zoning, that would be tough. That's tough to, you know, abide by.
Yeah, I think so if I was looking at it that way. But like I said, I mean, what we're trying to do is maintain the value for the property owner. And if you're a private property owner, I'm sure you could appreciate that as well. Because you don't want somebody devaluing your property, do you? Because, I mean, like I seen, you know, just for example, the tidelands being filled in, like Clinton was just saying, not only did it cover over traditional and ancestral canoe runs, but it also created a whole nother beachfront in front of houses that thought they were buying beachfront.
Okay. Any more on that, Ed?
No, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Ed.
I don't have any public comment. How do I go about getting on the agenda with this? 'Cause I don't want to deal with the committee, you know? I want to deal with the leaders of the community with this land. I want to be able to be on the agenda with this thing.
when that's coming up for discussion?
Like the next, maybe, well, I don't know when I'm gonna be here. When is the next scheduled city council meeting?
June 3rd.
But at this stage, we're not doing any planning for, that I'm aware of, am I speaking? Are we doing any planning for design at this point?
Well, there's funding in the budget to continue that process in earnest starting July 1st,
July 1st, okay.
when the budget gets approved. And at
Okay.
that point, we're not going to start a planning effort in July. It's going to probably be later in the summer. But the item can be discussed on the agenda whenever the council wants to schedule it.
It's up to the chair to put it on the agenda, so if I came back June 3rd, it has to be on the agenda when there's a full council. Is that acceptable?
So really, any council member can ask for an agenda item, and a full council doesn't need to be present to plan for something for the next meeting.
I get it, but I'd like, for the sake of discussion, full council would be nice on this matter, in my opinion.
Can we put it on for next meeting?
If you like, sure. I don't know if we'll have the whole council next meeting, but we can certainly schedule it.
If we try, because you'll be gone after that, right?
I'm leaving June 7th.
Yeah, so yeah.
And I
For the
probably
first one
would
in
be
June.
back on July, but yeah. Kind of shape up in for a while, but. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So that'll be on the agenda.
We'll put it under new business.
Okay. Okay, any more public comment?
Just lastly, do I need to resubmit this?
No.
Okay.
No more public comment? Do we need to hear these ordinances, John?
Reading of correspondence.
No reading correspondence on it. Yeah. We've done the reading correspondence. Any discussion on it? No? Okay, we'll move on. Consideration of resolution and ordinances. Ordinance 734, sale of city-owned tied and submerged lands to Rodney Payne.
Mr. Mayor, there's a memo in the packet. The memo's a little bit longer than a lot of our previous land sales. There was some discussion at the last council meeting regarding the value, and that kind of affects some of the other decisions that we generally make when we do land sales. Not always, but traditionally the council has, when it has chosen to sell land, it's been at pretty close to what the appraised market value of the property has been. That's put us in a position where we've been very confident about putting the responsibility for the cost of the appraisal upfront on the applicant as opposed to the city paying for the appraisal upfront. I feel that if there's more unknown, more subjectivity in what the council will ultimately ask for above the appraised value of the property, then it warrants a discussion and some direction to staff about whether or not we should continue the practice of having the applicant pay for the appraisal if the final sale value is going to be significantly different than that appraisal, or whether or not the city should pay for appraisals up front and then include the cost of the appraisal as part of or in addition to the sale value when the sale is completed. So a little bit more discussion a little bit more direction, I guess, on this sale than in the past. And ultimately, whether it's discussed tonight or at a future meeting, or a little bit broader discussion about sale of property. There were some comments at this May 6th meeting about the appraised values and sales, previous sales generally being way under the value of what some of the council members thought they should be. And so I would appreciate some direction generally in what the council would feel, especially if the council wants to leave the appraisal cost to the applicant up front. It would be helpful if there's some discussion of where the council kind of views the ultimate price being in relation to the appraisal. Hard to complicate it, but it's based on the May 6th discussion, it's a little bit different than we have handled land sales for the past several years. And so looking at some direction from the council would be helpful in addition to consideration of the ordinance itself.
Has the city sold tidelands before,
Yes.
recently?
We did a tideland sale right next to the property that's being considered tonight. So the lot 5 of the Port St. Nicholas 3 subdivision is Mr. Payne's lot. Lots 6 and 7 are owned by John and Teresa McCallum, who also built a house on the upland of lot 7, I think, and purchased the tideland in front of lots 6 and 7 from the city. I'm sorry, I don't remember when it was. It's probably been 2 years, 3 years maybe.
I don't recall it, but that sale.
We also completed a exchange of tideland for uplands along Hamilton Drive when Shelter Cove Lodge was first under development.
We exchanged tidelands with Sean C. In some land trade that included 2 or 3 upland parcels and the tidelands where the dock is down below the Sean C. Hotel.
The old
floating dock. So we do have a fair list of tidelands that we have both sold and leased to folks over the years.
Well, I for one am opposed to selling it, but I would be open to leases possibly, but as far as the council goes, I'm not sure where they're at on it, so.
Part of what we're hoping the council will do, at least what I'm hoping the council will do, is establish, make clear its expectations so that Mr. Payne knows whether or not to continue through with going through the expense of the appraisal. In the past, the council has, by practice and policy, sold at 8%, sold at the appraised value of the property. Jim, Councilmember C, at a meeting recently, suggested that the city ought to be selling at a premium. And I think if the council wants to move in that direction, it should make a public statement that that's what its intent is, so that it's not a surprise for Mr. Payne or another prospective buyer down the road. And if the council's position is not to sell at all, then of course Mr. Payne wouldn't proceed with the appraisal. Brian's suggestion about paying for the appraisal up front and then setting the price provides stability for the property owner, because he hasn't shelled out for the appraisal only to find out that it's going to cost some percentage more than what the estimated market value is. So this process will work great. It'll work best if the council makes those expectations known at the start. And the council's got lots of options. It can change its lease rate. It can keep its lease rate. It can set a policy for selling property at appraised value or at appraised value plus a premium. We've got a lot of authority here.
Can I ask why you're opposed to the sale and would rather lease?
Because in the future, there's gonna be fewer and fewer areas or space available on that beach out there. If you go out there now, there's about 60 docks. 10 years ago, there were probably 10.
Mm-hmm.
Every year, they're adding 4 or 5 new docks now. And it's beginning to look like Florida.
Well.
It is. I'm trolling out there and I see it. I mean, every house has their own individual dock and it's starting to look just like Florida now. Where your house is right on the dock, on the beach, and everybody has their boat tied up. And I feel that we're kind of jeopardizing the reason why we all live here.
Do you think the city would have use for that?
Land at
Land?
some point, if you want to start a clam farm, possibly. Like Ed was saying, somebody applied for a clam farm back in Doyle Bay, and they would have to use their uplands to
Which would have
facilitate
blocked
that.
our future logging operations. I
But
mean,
it
we've
was-
been taking care of that area, pre-commercial thinning, doing the silviculture for years now. And it would be a huge blow if we had to, go around somebody's clam farm because of, the state of Alaska's need to make a little money. But, and also, Mr. Mayor, if I could for a second, because I think Councilman Campich's concern was with the city being limited to its uses for the tideland. I don't think that Sean Seed is necessarily against the city selling the tidelands. It's just that with our first right of refusal on the uplands of it, it kind of defeats the purpose if we take the sale of the uplands and then the city still owns the tidelands, which has a dock, or, they could put rock on it and extend it out through an Army Corps permit. They could there's a number of uses that a lot of us don't even think about. So that's my concern, is not the sale of the tideland so much as the way that it's structured, I guess, with the first right of refusal.
And I hear what you're saying, but there's 5 lots, correct? It's and then 2 of them are already sold. So there's only 3 potential lots that this could be an issue on.
Well,
If it extended all the way through St. Nick, I could see.
Well, like Brian said, like we've done exchanges through the tidelands. We have other tidelands in the city of Craig and
Okay.
areas where it would set a precedent. Is
I see.
What we're worried about. It's not so much the St. Nick area. It's and just the way it's being used, I guess.
I understand better.
Thank you.
I look at this and I think you have to look at the uplands in order to determine what the value to the city is of the tidelands. The tidelands in front of a private lot have a different value to the city than the tidelands like down in Crab Bay or places where we own some of the uplands. That's a completely different story. And I think we leased to Richard Trojan.
Yes.
So we're leasing there and we own the uplands, and I think is the appropriate approach. On private property, unless the homeowner or the landowner, determines to do something and would prefer to purchase the property, it's pretty inconceivable the city's going to do a project there. And to lease it would probably discourage development of the lot. So I don't have a problem with selling a lot in front of a private land in the situation out there. Each one is, I think you have to, I look at it as a case-by-case basis. In regards to the issue with Sean C. and the right of first refusal, developing the tidelands with the dock and stuff like that, and I share your concern with what's going on out there. But developing that creates more value in the overall property. So that, in theory, would benefit, whoever the future owner is, whether it's Sean Seed or a different private individual, if it should ever come on the market and be sold. I guess my suggestion would be before the city, takes some kind of an authoritative action, if we decided to sell it and put stipulations on it, I would rather see us approach Mr. Payne, or actually it would be, I think, appropriate for Sean Seat to approach Mr. Payne have a dialogue and see if they can come to a mutual understanding. And to a large degree, it would seem like it would be in the property owner's interest as well to tie the land base together, because eventually, whether it's 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, there's a good chance it's going to change hands. And having it tied together simplifies the issue that, Ed is addressing. Maybe this can be worked out without the city having to, do something that I personally, I feel uncomfortable with, because it's not within our zoning and our purview.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor. And I fully agree with you, Mike, and that's basically what we're trying to do in a nutshell. I think you came around full circle there, but yes, that's what we're trying to do, is maintain the value of the property for the landowner themselves, because like I heard you say, it simplifies it by having it one piece. And because we already have a complex with our first right of refusal, it just complicates it even more. So yeah, we would like to, eventually see those tidelands and properties put together for the homeowners. Because I think that would create the most value for not only the city of Craig, but for Sean Seat in the future, if they so ever happen to exercise this first right of refusal, which we've been doing the last couple of years.
Right, and so I agree with that, but my suggestion is that I would encourage you to approach Mr. Payne and see if he would feel similarly in terms of combining the lots, and then it takes the city out of the equation of having to kind of weigh in on something that it's a little bit out of our purview, and I don't feel comfortable with personally.
Exactly.
I can make contact with
And
Mr. Payne.
It's not completely out of our purview or unheard of. The council has the right to attach conditions of the sale. And like I said, it's, really, it just depends on the platting, how the platting is done, whether it becomes one parcel or two parcels. It is not unheard of that we have required a property that we have sold that essentially only has the potential to benefit one property owner, that we have required that the property be attached as part of the replatting or subdivision process. It's not extremely common, but we have done it over the years, and generally it gets done through the sale terms process, which the council does have authority over.
Another question, would that tidelands be taxable as property?
Yeah.
And the improvements?
It'd be taxable
Yes.
even if it's leased or sold.
Yes.
And the improvement?
And the improvements, yes.
Mr. Mayor, I have one question for Brian. Brian, do you know if you kept that parcel in one piece, would it be more valuable to the homeowner, or would it matter if it was split up? Do you know off the top of your head?
I think that's a question best put to the homeowner.
Yeah, I don't think.
I'm just thinking for like the resale of the property.
Again, from a strict land value status, I don't know that it makes any difference. From a resale value status, it really depends on what the next property owner is, or the potential buyer is interested in.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know the answer to that. That would be a question for the owner.
Okay, thanks.
And someone potentially buying it. From a land sale perspective, it's already a large parcel. I would not imagine that it's a significantly different value from an assessment perspective.
Well, I agree with everything Mike said. I'm hesitant to sell tidelands, but in this case, I'm not really understanding what real value it would have to the city not owning the other part of it. And so I agree with everything Mike said.
I did too, Mr. Mayor. I read that letter 3 times. It didn't sound right, it didn't feel right. And I couldn't wrap my brain around it until
Mike,
Mike spoke. Yeah, I feel the same way too. And I agree with you, Mr. Mayor, as far as Port St. Nicholas starting to look like Florida. I was going to ask if
Y'all need to take a trip to Florida. Because it just, well,
it's a difficult question because it's outside of our jurisdiction, and I didn't know if I should ask Sean C. Is there an ordinance? Because there are way too many docks.
We only have jurisdiction on 5 lots there.
Right.
So, I mean.
And I'm not for selling the kind of.
And for the most part, the state of Alaska does not require a lease or a sale for private residential docks. So on state tidelands, a residentially used dock falls under what the state calls generally allowed use. And so there's a short process, but unless it's, like Ed says, unless it's being used for a commercial purpose, the state generally does not require a lease or a sale of the tideland for those docks to be put in place. They give a lot of deference to the upland property owner to put a non-commercial residential dock in front of their property on state tideland.
So the rest of them get it for free, right?
Pretty much.
We can weigh in. I mean, when anybody requests a permit, and Brian, if I'm wrong in this, correct me, but I believe I've seen notices at the post office where people are applying to put a dock in.
Mm-hmm.
Generally, it's just kind of perform a thing and they get it. As individuals and as a community, we do have a right to, provide comment to the state of Alaska Department of, whichever department it is, environmental conservation or whoever do the permitting. Which department would it be?
I don't know that I've ever seen a permit from the state for these generally allowed uses. We do for leases and such, but for the generally allowed uses, we don't. I think what you generally see are the core permit applications that are advertised. And so that's looking at a specific set of criteria that the Corps is approving or not approving a permit. But I think the generally allowed use permit process does not have a significant public process to it.
But all the docks that are built out there, they do have to acquire a Corps permit.
Yes.
So that's our opportunity as individuals and as a community, if we choose to weigh in on that. That would be tough to do on land that's outside of the city. I share your concerns too. I mean, you can imagine they're gonna go all the way around the bay before it's over.
It's already there.
But that's, that's a whole other road now.
Yeah.
I would suggest, this is my suggestion, is that we don't take action on this right now. We can have a, further conversation with Mr. Payne, and I would ask Ed that you approach him and see if you guys can come to a mutual agreement to rectify the concern you have, which you have standing there, I understand that.
We would like,
I could do that.
we would like to see the uplands combined with the tideland, plotted as one.
And this is for
If
the
he's gonna
benefit
do
of the
this,
homeowner.
then that would be something that we would ask for in a covenant when if we do sell, is that they be combined, and because it just makes it simpler for a lot of reasons.
It makes it simpler for future sales of the homeowners, whoever's gonna transfer the property, because at some sort, at a certain point in time, they're gonna have to come to Shaughnessy for a first right of refusal. And if the board chooses to buy that, it will complicate the sale of the tidelands with it. So I think it, like Mike said, it would be of most value to the homeowner to combine it as one piece. And that's why I was asking Brian if he knew if it was more valuable to the homeowner as one piece or two parcels, me as an individual, I would think that one piece would be more valuable to the homeowner, especially if you could secure the dock and the uplands at one time.
But one concern I would have is that if you had someone that was to give a right of way to an adjacent lot, sell his dock to that lot, and then give a right of way across the corner of his property to get to that lot that he had built and put in, that would.
Which we've had happen.
Totally separate the title from the home. There is that potential.
Yeah.
And if you had a guide service or another lodge going in, charter outfit, that could happen.
Well, technically, they're not supposed to, as our covenants say, our home sites were set up for our shareholders, and technically for a period of 10 years after a transfer sale, we're not supposed to use those properties for business. So there shouldn't be any more lodges going in with docks. And I will make a comment to the council, because I heard several members bring this up, is I believe half of those docks out there aren't permitted at all through the Army Corps or otherwise.
Well, like I said, that's outside of our purview.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring it up for your information, because, you know, if you're concerned about all the docks out there, I just want to let you know that more than half of them.
But I've never seen an opportunity for public comment on the course.
You see the notices at the post office.
Are they? That's just a blur anymore. So it's like, all right. So we're gonna table this for future?
Yes.
After they have a discussion with Mr. Payne?
Yeah.
See what he intends to do.
That should be done by motion, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
I would move to table proposed ordinance 734, second reading, until we hear back from Sean C. Incorporated, and also hopefully Mr. Payne, to see if they can come to a mutual concurrence on how to proceed.
Second. Oh,
Motion's been made and seconded to table the motion
Just pick
until
Okay.
John C. and Mr. Payne can butt heads a little bit.
No, friendly conversation. This is for the benefit of Mr. Payne as well, so I hope that he sees it that way. I mean, it's for the benefit of the homeowners and our shareholders, so.
Anyway, we would get hold of him and talk to him.
Okay.
Make things easier on us.
So I have one more comment on that. I would just like to, I understand this a lot better now too. I was reading the letter, I still was struggling to understand some of it, but your sharing with us has helped me understand this better, and I appreciate that.
No worries.
Great.
And if anybody would actually like a copy of those protected covenants, because there's quite a bit on there that is relevant to the city's operation. Like what I was just saying for the businesses, you know, for a long time, you know, they were using that kind of as a tax haven to get away from paying taxes to the city, which I believe that if you're gonna start a business, you should be in the city limits of Craig paying those taxes, contributing to the city of Craig.
Okay. Got that taken care of? We need to vote on that, John?
You do.
Roll call?
Just a voice vote, is that correct, or because of if we're tabling it?
It could be a voice
Just a
vote,
voice
yeah.
vote.
Voice vote?
Mm-hmm.
All in favor?
aye.
Opposed? Okay. Moving on, ordinance 735, zoning, rezoning tract F, US Forester, or USS 1429.
Move to approve ordinance 735.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded to approve ordinance 735, rezoning tract F, USSS 1429. Any discussion?
I just had a question. Is there a reason when E was rezoned, why F wasn't? Just hadn't gotten there? Okay.
Our archive shed. So the little building that you see over there,
Uh-huh.
the two plots were zoned high density residential, I believe, in 2003. Our archive shed stayed there. What we're proposing is moving the archive shed, consolidating it up to the main office and actually getting rid of that, leveling the grade off to do the 3 duplexes that we had.
So when you rezoned E, you weren't planning on doing anything to F?
I don't think they were at the time.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they were planning on keeping the archive shed there because it has records all the way back into the 1920s in it.
Okay.
I was just curious. That's all I got.
I had to research that myself. I read a lot of minutes.
Question?
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none? Passed.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
I think that one is gonna have to be a roll call vote, yeah.
Let's try that.
Okay. Hannah Belvin,
Yes.
Millie Schoonover,
Yes.
Michael Campnich.
Yes.
Julie McDonald,
Yes.
Chanel McKinley.
Yes.
Thank you.
Resolution 2110, establishing November 27th, 2021 as a sales tax free day in Craig.
Move to approve resolution 2110.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve resolution 2110, establishing November 27th, 2021 as sales tax free day in Craig. Any discussion on that? Voice vote.
No,
Okay, all in
roll
favor?
call. Roll call.
Roll call?
Yeah,
All
sorry.
right, roll call then.
Okay, Hannah Belvin,
Yes.
Millie Schoonover,
Yes.
Michael Campnich.
Yes.
Julie McDonald,
Yes.
Chanel McKinley.
Yes.
Thank you.
Resolution 2111, supporting the Fort St. Nick Road paving and water line replacement.
Move to approve resolution 21-1.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve resolution 21-11, supporting Fort St. Nick Road paving and water line replacement.
Roll call.
We're gonna do a roll call vote.
Hannah Belvin,
Yes.
Millie Schoonover,
Yes.
Michael Campnich. Julie McDonald.
Yes.
Chanel McKinley. Chanel McKinley.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, presentation from the Cedar Group regarding, we already took care of that. Moving on, reading the correspondence.
No.
Oh, we jumped all over the place, didn't I? Yeah, hang on. Oh, now we're ready.
You were on, I was on the right one.
That's good, isn't it?
Yes, that's
Yeah, I
why.
What? Look at
I don't know
that.
what you're doing now. Cancel that.
I did that
I
now.
don't know what to do.
Me?
No. What is that?
That's still messed up.
Continue.
Do you want a hard copy?
Unfinished business,
Found
Mr.
it.
Mayor.
Okay.
This, we're really on that one.
That one there, what I thought. Really? We did.
Right?
Yeah. All right,
Actually, that's not even on the agenda.
it is not.
What's not on the agenda?
It's in the packet, but not on the agenda.
What
The
is,
COVID, make an amendment to the COVID,
Okay,
yeah.
It's,
it's not on the agenda.
Aren't we supposed to talk about the garbage ordinance?
We have excuse me real quick, Mr. Mayor. We do have an amended agenda which gets emailed to everyone. And so it's not going to show up in the actual packet there. And so that's where the confusion is coming from.
So we are doing the COVID thing?
Yes.
Okay, so then we are right there. There you go.
Okay. So we're doing the COVID thing, Brian?
we're actually at unfinished business, I think.
Right.
Right, yeah.
Unfinished
It
business.
doesn't show on my agenda.
Consider options for acquisition of a garbage truck.
This will be quick. Russell has listed pricing from the vendor who has not responded yet. So we have nothing new to report to the council. We'll continue it at the next agenda.
All right. Thank you, John. New business, consider change to COVID-19 protocols.
Mr. Mayor, the CDC did change its standards for, I don't want to call it behavior, but practices in light of the prevalence of the vaccine and other issues. And so I think you're probably already aware that I've copied the relevant portion from the CDC website to the memo in your packet. Our practice, the new standard set by CDC saying that if you're vaccinated plus 2 weeks, if you're fully vaccinated, then you can resume what we would consider normal actions when milling in public. You don't need to wear a mask if you're inside within 6 feet of somebody. The vaccination in CDC's eyes makes that superfluous. So, however, we have a number, sort of a longstanding policy at the gym, rec center, the library, the aquatic center, and to some extent at City Hall to require people to wear a mask on entry. So, given the new CDC guidance, we need to know what the council's wishes are with regard to our practices in these facilities. If we should continue unabated as we are unchanged from our current practice, or if we should comply with the CDC, not comply, accept the CDC guidelines and permit vaccinated folks to come into our facilities without masks. So,
I would suggest that the city allow vaccinated people to enter without masks, with the caveat of giving each department head the ability to know how to best handle that at their facility. And an example I could think of pretty easy, like at karate, it's the same 20 people. So it's very easy to know, okay, these 10 are vaccinated, these 10 are not. They come there wouldn't be a need every week to stop them and be like, who's vaccinated, who's not. Now we're getting ready to have a ballet recital. It's not going to be large. There's like 10 kids, 2 people per kid are going to come for this recital. In a situation like that, it's going to be very burdensome, I would think, for staff to determine, as this 30 people come into the gym, who, that don't come regularly, are you vaccinated? That's going to be very burdensome. So in that instance, I would just say require masks for the event. Does that make sense?
I understand.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay to just ask people if you're vaccinated?
I mean, I guess if they don't want to reveal it, they can just wear a mask.
Right.
It's not a violation of HIPAA if they provide the information, and you're not a healthcare provider, so it's not, transfer of the information is not violating confidentiality. If you ask someone whether or not they're vaccinated, they can choose to tell you or not, and it's not a violation of HIPAA.
Yeah. Rusty couldn't call your doctor's office and ask if you're vaccinated before you come visit the water treatment plant, but he could ask you.
Got it?
And everybody got cards when you get them. I keep mine in my wallet.
I refuse to show
that's fine. Then you probably get stuck wearing a mask.
I don't care. All right. What are we gonna do here, guys? Except the,
Mr. Mayor, how does staff feel about it? From my way of thinking, if they felt comfortable, fine. If they didn't feel comfortable, then keep it as is.
We're just directing them to make protocol, right?
Right, and it's as the saying goes, a two-edged sword. I mean, if you leave it to the department managers to use their discretion, the public's not going to know readily whether to mask up or not going into a particular facility. Some managers will be fine with maskless, some won't. None of them are going to want to be asked. Few of them are going to want to be asking the public if they're vaccinated. I agree that that's awkward. I understand that it's permitted and that the public doesn't have to answer. But putting myself in the shoes of a department manager, I could see where that would be difficult. If I was making the policy, I would probably, at least for City Hall, say, if you're vaccinated, you're welcome to come in. If you're not vaccinated, please don a mask. Post that, and don't ask specifically when people enter the building. That's the approach I would take.
I agree.
Yeah.
Keep
I
it
agree.
simple.
I would say it has to be uniform, because if it's not, we know where that goes.
Yeah. Chaos.
If we put signs up like that, and I agree with you, that's the way it should be, but I can see once we flex backwards on it a little bit with more flexibility, there's a high likelihood you're gonna have some people that are gonna be offended.
Offended
If they,
by what?
that they would be asked to wear a mask if they haven't gotten vaccinated, whereas I may walk in the door and not have my mask because I've been vaccinated.
I mean,
I just can say I can anticipate that.
I can
don't
see.
disagree with the policy.
I agree, but we can just fall back on the fact that we're following the CDC guidelines. I mean, realistically, the city of Craig is not employing an epidemiologist to do our own study. You know what I mean? So we're falling back.
I agree. I just wanted to voice that because
Yeah.
it almost inevitably will probably.
But on the flip side, we're going to have vaccinated people that are outraged. The city's still making them wear a mask when the CDC says they don't have to. So no matter what we do with COVID, people are going to be angry. There's no win.
And we just seen a pretty recent example where if people get careless, in catch can, they're at the highest level they've ever been because they were careless. A few people, a few people is what it takes.
So hopefully they're high-risk people got vaccinated.
Anyways, I'm comfortable going with the CDC recommendations. That works.
Yeah. Works for me. Does that work, John? You want to vote on it?
I guess I don't see anybody shaking their head no. So, I mean, is there any objection from the council if we post?
To have to say.
We should let Chris talk. He's been sitting here all night.
I know. Well, he's next.
I just didn't want everybody to hate our managers.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Honestly,
Yeah.
I don't want to put that on them.
I agree.
Or more than
I can be honoring myself about it, like, I understand how it.
We know that.
Or even more than the managers or public-facing departments have a lot of employees that aren't senior management that would be put in that position.
Exactly. Okay. We know what to do. CDC guidelines.
So it sounds like you're suggesting we post the CDC guidelines and ask the public to comply with them.
Yes.
Is that it?
Yes.
Sounds major consensus.
Okay, thank you.
How did we miss Chris?
He's at the end. Look at the paper one.
I'm still lost.
We are.
There you are.
There, yes.
Go ahead, Chris.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just here to, one, show appreciation to the city of Craig for your longstanding support of the school district and beyond what you are required to do by state statute. Regularly, you have been providing cash supplemental in-kind over $630,000 to the Craig City School District. We're greatly appreciative of that.
And I'm here just to address any questions you might have regarding our FY22 budget as we move forward.
I have one comment. I just wanted to, personally, I'm very appreciative for the school's efforts with rehoming Head Start. Seems to be a very good fit. Everybody's in favor of, so I appreciate your efforts on that. And then I appreciate your efforts with the upcoming summer school program, since there's been so many gaps with COVID. So I appreciate those two efforts that you're working on.
Thank you.
We do appreciate that, because Head Start, I want to make sure that that works. And we'll do what we need to help you facilitate it, what we can.
Yeah, and that's really, once it came forward to the school district, you know, that Lincoln High was having some difficulty securing a location. We have the room. It's a no-brainer from my standpoint. There are kids anyway. There'll be our current base building. We can easily relocate those services elsewhere. That facility will be available for Lincoln High. They actually came in, the president and their CEO came and toured the facility today, and with just minor modifications to that building, it'll be able to meet federal Head Start guidelines.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, that was been a real concern of mine, trying to keep Head Start afloat here. So
Yeah.
I'm glad to see you put them there, because I think the kids will benefit further in their school career from being exposed to it very early. So.
Yeah, we're glad to do it. I think it's a really good partnership between us and Lincoln High and just for the community.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Mr. Mayor. So under state statute, the council's job here is to settle on a contribution to the school district for the coming year. If the council takes no action tonight, the 30 days starting May 1st will elapse before the next meeting, and the amount that the school district has included in its budget documents will be considered approved by default. Typically, the council affirmatively makes a motion to appropriate the $550,660 into the school district's budget. And so I would recommend the council make that affirmative motion and approve it based on the school district's budget.
I would move to approve the
$550,660.
what he said to the City of Craig School District for the 2022.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the school donation budget, whatever we want to call it.
Voice vote.
Voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chanel?
She's got to unmute it.
Chanel?
No time.
She went to sleep.
Probably wrangling a child.
We got 4 anyway.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, I'm here.
There you go.
I lost my phone.
Okay. Just say yes.
Yes.
All right, thank you. You got that? Anybody opposed? Nope. All righty. Council comments. Thank you, Chris.
Good night.
Say one thing.
You got the look.
You know, I'd like to recognize Pat Boyd, and I know there was a number of other people that worked with her,
Yeah.
just the native recognition and listening and, you know, use native in the state. She did a good job of, you know, just generating and creating and maintaining awareness of the issue, so appreciate that. I know there was more involved than just
Yeah.
that, but I think
She led the effort.
She led the effort.
Yeah.
Any more comments, council? None?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Jim's not here.
Motion been made to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?